Welcome to One Woman. I'm your host, Sharla Brown, and on today's show, we have the amazing and incredible Mary Long Irwin, a good friend of mine. And this show is all about interviewing women and their incredible lives and stories. And you are definitely somebody on the top of my list to have on the show. So thanks for being on here, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, so I usually start with kind of Mary as a little girl. You know, what kind of a little girl are you? Because I think a lot of people in the community look at you as, you know, a business professional, somebody who's, you know, in a leadership role. Were you always like that?
Well, I grew up in sort of out in the country on a chicken farm, actually.
Wow.
There were 7 of us kids, and my dad was an entrepreneur, and to us, it was just normal. At that time, you either worked in the mill, or you worked as a nurse or a teacher, or you had your own business. So it was something that was second nature to me. I did, finish school, and I went to college here. And I did try my hand at teaching nursery school, which lasted about 6 months. I didn't like that. and then I just slowly started into my own business. I got married when I was quite young. I think I was 19 years old. In 1975, I got married. And immediately had 2 twin girls, had 2 beautiful twin girls. And then shortly after that, I had another daughter. And then shortly after that, because we'd had a lot of issues with our twin girls, we lost one when she was 6 months old. And then we found out, because they were identical twins, we found out that my other daughter, Carla, had cystic fibrosis, and that's how Carrie passed away. So it was very trying. It was difficult for my husband at that time. The marriage didn't last. It was, I think, very hard for him to handle. So there I was, a single mom with a girl that needed a lot of medical treatment. And she had a lot of health issues when she was young, and a newborn baby. And so what I started to do was started my own business.
Wow.
And because it would give me some flexible hours. So I opened up Microwave World with a lot of support from the community, as well as my suppliers, because I had no money to start Microwave World. But the suppliers gave me the product on consignment. So as I sold them, I would pay for them. And I was very fortunate. Within the first year, our sales reached $1 million, and it just took off. And I had that business for about 10 years when we reached the saturation point, and then I decided to sort of move on. But it was a good experience for me. I was very fortunate. I was able to hire a woman that came in from Jamaica, and she lived with us and helped me with the girls, because I couldn't take Carla to daycare, because cystic fibrosis means you need to really protect them from colds and flus. So it was some challenges. There were some bumpy roads with Carla's health. Carol was absolutely fine. And then as Carla got a little bit older, it became more and more challenging to have a daughter that had these issues. And I found that I was always worried about her. I was always worried whether or not, she would survive, because it was a terminal disease, and I could see her, deteriorating, her health deteriorating. But she was a strong person, a strong, beautiful young woman. And she took good care of herself, and took very good care of herself and her body. And she did very, very well for a number of years. And then after I worked at the college for a few years, and then an opportunity came up to manage the Community Development Corporation in Terrace Bay. So I thought the girls were pretty young. It was a great time to move them to a smaller community, a little bit easier maybe to raise them as a single mom. So I moved to Terrace Bay, and the community of Terrace Bay and Scriber, they're second to none. They were amazing. But Carla did get a few health challenges. We also had a challenge because I'd moved positions, and I was not able to get a drug plan. And Carla's drugs at that time varied anywhere from 15 to 20. One year it hit 30,000.
Wow.
And it was a challenge. So how to deal with that? I kept my full-time job and opened up another business.
Wow.
I started Moonlight, which was a bar in the basement of the Red Oak Inn, and it did very well. It paid off a lot of those medical bills, which I was grateful for. And I stayed there for I was there for about 5 years, and then I met my husband, Jock. We met and got married very quickly. I felt like I had known him all my life, and he was a strong support for me. And I always believed that God gave me Jock because of what was to come. And there was no way I think I could have handled that on my own. Carla got quite ill, and she spent more and more time in St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto. And she ended up eventually living in Toronto because it was just too difficult to commute and do that. So she ended up living in Toronto. I moved back to Thunder Bay after I'd been in Terrace Bay for about 10 years. I moved back to Thunder Bay, and there was a job with the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce that came available. And I took that job partly because my husband didn't want me commuting anymore. For our first 5 years of our marriage, he lived in Thunder Bay and I commuted. So it was a challenge. I think it's when I hit a moose on the highway.
Yeah, that highway is bad.
I think it's when I came home and told him that I had hit a moose. He really advocated for me to take a job in Thunder Bay. So that job became available, and it was a great job. I really enjoyed that. A lot of supporting local business, a lot of advocacy, and it was a great job. And I was there for 10 years, and I enjoyed it. But the job became quite big, and Carla's health issues became even bigger. And so it was a bit of a challenge to try and balance everything. So what I ended up doing was I left the chamber, and I was very fortunate that I had a number of job offers. And one of them was with Northern Ontario Angels. And the board called me and asked me if I'd be interested. They told me I could work from home. I jumped at that. It was a great opportunity. I could work with new business startups, which was something I was very passionate about. I was very familiar with business, and I had done the lending with the Community Development Corporation in Terrace Bay. I'd done 10 years of lending. I had 10 years of my own business and 10 years of advocating for business. So I felt that it was a really good fit, so I accepted the job. And shortly after I got the job, Carla Gain was going back and forth, but in the hospital. And she met this absolutely wonderful young man, and they fell in love, and 3 years later they got married. And so I was so happy for her. Her dream was to have this beautiful, wonderful wedding, and she did. She had a princess fairy tale wedding, and it was really amazing. Unfortunately, she got married on a Saturday, and Sunday she had to go back into the hospital again. And that was, I think, the very first time that she was upset, really upset about having to go back to the hospital. But she went back, and her health deteriorated so very quickly because she ended up with pneumonia. And she'd also had some other viruses and strains that were not, antibiotics couldn't touch them. So unfortunately, a few days later, she slipped into a coma, and she didn't survive. She was in coma in ICU for 10 days, and I just never dreamed that she wouldn't pull out of that, but she didn't survive. So she didn't really get to see her wedding videos or any of those things, but I look back at it now, and I'm really glad that we did have that wedding that we did, and she did get to, have this wonderful dream of hers. It's just unfortunate that it all happened so quickly.
Absolutely.
And I was surprised because I was surprised at how hard that was, because a lot of people would tell me, if you have a terminal child or a child with a terminal disease, that there is, you're going to have to face this. And I knew that somewhere, but I just never was prepared for it.
That day to
and
come.
So so it really rocked my world.
For sure. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and I think that's the worst nightmare of any mother is to lose a child, and we're going to talk about that in the next segment with Mary. Welcome back to One Woman. I'm your host, Sharla Brown, and on today's show, we've been talking with Mary Long Irwin all about her life. And, there's, like many people's lives, the good, the bad, the ugly, all
That's
that
right.
stuff. But I think for any woman and that chooses motherhood, one of the most horrible things that could ever happen or thought in your mind is ever losing that child.
That's right.
And, you went through that, once when, the twins were born, losing one at 6 months, and then, going through years of up and downs with Carla's health. And, so many times she pulled through thinking that, it was just another, downtime, but that she was going to pull through. And what that had to be like, and what the days to come afterwards looked like for you as a mother.
Well, the very first thing I think, once I was sort of could breathe again, I was shocked at how much support we got from this community. Carla had over the years grown up on the telethon, and so there was a lot of people rooting for me. The messages, the text, the email, the chocolate cookies, the banana cake. It was phenomenal. And I had a lot of people that rallied around me, and that was really, really helpful. But it was difficult. I would say it probably took me a year before I recall on the anniversary of her death, I told myself, okay, you are not going to cry today. And so it was a whole year before I didn't cry. But then with the support of Carol, Carol also had, this huge loss of her sister because they were very close. They were close in age and they did a lot of stuff together. But Carol grew stronger, and Carol moved back home and stayed with us for a bit, and together we just became much stronger. It took a while, it was slow, but through Carol I got to see the gifts that Carla gave me in her passing, and they were a lot of wonderful gifts. I liked music, something I never did. I needed to hear all of Carla's music to feel like I still had her around me, and now I end up loving music. I do a lot of traveling. I couldn't do traveling before at all because I always needed to be readily available when she was sick, and there were a lot of times where she would spend weeks or months in the hospital, so I would spend that time. So I got to travel all over the world. I just came back from Thailand, I came back from Italy, and so those are all gifts that I got. But one of the gifts that I treasure is I always had Carol, but my focus was so much on Carla's health that I didn't get to spend the quality time with Carol that I have now. And I realized what an amazing, beautiful young woman she is. And so I've had to learn, and I'm still learning, to accept her for who she is as a gift and not to worry that anything bad can happen to her. So, she bought a house out in the country, and if the roads are, slick or if it's snowing out, I have to phone her to see if she got home, and if I can't get a hold of her, I would go in panic mode. But I'm learning not to do that, and that's taking a lot. It's a huge fear for me that I have overcome, almost all overcome. But now I just appreciate her, and I've learned to appreciate the people in my life, the family, my friends. I don't let the small stuff bother me. It's not worth it. I've removed myself from a lot of negative people, which I had to do to surround myself with the positive energy, because really life is short and you need to do what you love to do, and tell the people in your lives that you love them and be with them and spend time with them and really look at the gifts that they are in your life. So that was a big gift that Carla taught me. She tried to live her life like that, but I never really understood it until I've gone through this. And now I understand why Carla would stop and smell the roses and listen to her friends and listen to what people say. And I'm learning to do that now. And I'm learning not to take somebody else's negative and ruin my day. It's not that important. Your family, your friends, that's what's really important to you. Or at least for me, it's very important.
And I think that's so beautiful, Mary, that you can look at those gifts, because I think grief can keep people stuck for a really long
They can.
time, especially losing a child.
Yes.
And so the fact that, you know, you shift your perspective and look at the gifts that you've been given through having her life, even if it wasn't as long as you had hoped it to be, you can look back at all those wonderful, you know, memories and the gifts that she continues to give you, even though she's not here. You know?
No, that's right. And I've learned, like, I have other friends who've had to deal with horrific things with their children. And so now I'm able to reach out because they were people, total strangers, that reached out to me, and I know how invaluable that was to me. And so I've learned that I can, through my tragedy, help somebody else. And we can, as long as we care about each other and are just kinder and gentler people, it really makes it much easier to deal with.
Right, absolutely. And I'm just sitting here in awe. You know, you're telling me your story, and you know, you have children, and then you know, you have a child who's not healthy, and the demands of that, and all the fear of in and out of hospitals, the expense of the medications. You're now a single mom. You go through a divorce through all of this. You have a job and a business to do what it takes to do what you need to do. Like, I'm sitting beside one of the strongest human beings, I think, that I know. And how do you do it? You know, like, there could be a woman that's watching who might be facing something, and it's like, what are the things that kept you going?
I don't really think anybody really understands how strong they are until that's your only option. It's because you can't fall apart. You can in a way, but I mean, you can't let it break you because you still have so many other people depending on you. And I needed to live my life as well. And I had a daughter that also needed me. And I realized that I could stay on that couch under a blanket eating chocolate-covered jujubes for the rest of my life, but that's not. What am I then saying to Carla, and what am I then saying to Carol? You know, life is just so much more. And again, I was very lucky that I had a wonderful, strong, supportive husband. I can't imagine what he went through the year after she died, when I would just be crying every night. That still amazes me how strong he was, and how much support and caring and gentle and kindness family and friends have to get me to where I am today. It's not been an easy road. I would never recommend it anybody to have to go through that pain. It's very, I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy. It's a pain like no other. But there is the gifts on the other side. And if you stop to take a look at that, there are huge gifts. I am so much more of a person today because I had Carla in my life, and because I've gone through those circumstances. I believe I am stronger. I believe that I'm more empathetic, and I'm just a better rounded person because of my life, what I had gone through, and because of the circumstances in my life.
Absolutely. Well, we are going to take another quick break, but we'll be right back with Mary and talk more about her life journey. Welcome back to One Woman. I'm your host, Sharla Brown, and on today's show, we've been talking with Mary Long Irwin and all about her life story. And, you know, Mary, you are such a strong citizen in our community. You do so many amazing things. And let's talk about kind of your role now in the community, because you have just an incredible leadership role that makes such an impact in Northern Ontario and even like around the world because of what you do.
Well, I'm very fortunate. Again, I have an amazing job. I think I have one of the best jobs there is. I match up companies, new companies, or companies that want to expand, and entrepreneurs with investors. So here in Northern Ontario, and my territory is north of Barrie to the Manitoba border, so it's quite big. But here in Northern Ontario, we have about 350 angel investors. These are people that are in our community that provide support for new businesses, mostly businesses that are in the technology-based or in the IT or businesses with medical technology, new inventions, but people that need a significant amount of money to get their businesses going, and they're not able to get it through traditional finance. And so we match them up with an investor, much like on Dragon's Den.
Right.
So we match them up with an investor, and the investor puts some money in. The investor usually gets a percentage of the company or shares. And in some cases, it's convertible debt, so they will just do a loan type of debt, but a variety of ways. And the companies and the investors then are able to both make some money on this company, on the entrepreneur's idea. But more importantly, in Northern Ontario, the investors not only provide money, they also provide a lot of support. They have all of this network, this amazing expertise, experience.
Wisdom.
Yes, they do. And when the match is right, it is really, really right. And it works well. And the companies have, well, we've seen the successes. And fortunately, and a lot of people don't understand, but in Northern Ontario, we've been the top angel network for almost 6 years in a row now.
Wow.
Meaning we've done more deals, we've done put more money into private businesses, private money into private business. It's not any government money, it's private money. And we're really fortunate that we have FedNor that supports it. So FedNor pays for my salary and some of the expenses. And so none of that government money goes in there. Like none of the FedNor is just to manage this program and to match up angel investors with companies.
Right, and that's truly the heartbeat of this country.
It is
entrepreneurship. So if you didn't have, that kind of private investment, a lot of these ideas and innovation and technology just wouldn't even come to, fruition, for sure.
Or it could happen, but the money is from the Toronto or somewhere else, and then they want the business to move. So you've got this creative, wonderful mind that come up with these ideas, and they're forced to move their business. Now they don't have to. They can be located right here. And I just wanted to talk about that as well. There is so much going. I'm going to just use Thunder Bay as an example, but there is so much going on here in this city. We have some brilliant, brilliant young people here that start amazing businesses that we are not even aware of. And they have these wonderful development products that they've developed, software or new technology, and we are really growing. And I'm so proud of Thunder Bay that it has so many new products and ideas flowing right out of our community, and they're used across the world.
Right, that's awesome. And I know I had asked you before about, you wouldn't even imagine that there's 350 of these private investors, and that if any of them were women, and I was shockingly surprised that there's a good chunk of them that are women.
There's a lot of women, and the companies also like women investors. They're a little bit more patient. Really, angel investment money is patient money, because you're in at the beginning and it takes a while before you get your money back. But the women are patient, and women, I also found, take the time to really train and to teach the entrepreneur and show the entrepreneur, the new entrepreneur, that it really is okay to do, to be the mastermind behind this wonderful idea. And at the end of the day, you need to clean the toilets, because those toilets need to be cleaned. And so it's a very different perspective, and it's nice to see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just also want to point out, although it's 350, we're going to be one of the very first angel networks that have actually put close, right now we're very close to $100 million worth of private money going into just over 200 businesses across the north.
Wow.
And Sudbury and Thunder Bay have been very fortunate. We have a medical school, we have great universities all across the north, but there is a lot going on in our communities. And sometimes people still think of the north as very much rocks and trees, mining and paper mills, but there's so much more to Thunder Bay, so much
Very
more.
innovative.
Very innovative. And those companies that we have across the north created, in the area of 1,700 new jobs. And those jobs are good paying jobs, to the point where a couple of times we've had to recruit our university kids that have moved away, we've had to recruit them back because we need their talents. We need their talents in technology. So it's a wonderful place here.
Absolutely. And it set you up, when you look back of your story, which, has a lot of crazy moments, but you,
Yes.
through it all, you became an entrepreneur, like you said, doing lending while you were in Scarborough and Terrace Bay, advocating for businesses where you were at the chamber, and then setting you up for this role. Is this where you feel good, where you're going to be staying for a while? Like, what does the future hold for Mary?
Well, if you would speak to my husband, he'd probably say, like to retire soon. But I have no plans for that yet. I'm going to be staying for probably another 3 years or so, and then working on a part-time basis doing the consulting, because the territory is so big. I have somebody on the ground in Sault Ste. Marie, Timmins, North Bay, Sudbury, and then when I leave, we'll need somebody on the ground here. So that's what I will probably do.
Right.
Because it takes a long time to build that network, to build that trust, and to have investors that are willing to let go of some of their money and put it into companies. And because I still vet a lot of the companies, I do the due diligence and I vet the deals, and then we'll show the deals to the investors, and then the investors ultimately choose and negotiate how they're going to get paid back. It's not free money, but it's money that really strongly supports. And I live in a community throughout Northern Ontario where the investors who've made their money in the North really believe that they've got to give back to the North and give their expertise, their experience and their networks, and help build the North. And that's what they're doing.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you, Mary, for being on the show and sharing your story with us, because you're proof that everybody has. You never know what somebody's went through.
That's
you see
right.
somebody who's successful, they're in a leadership role, they're in a powerful role in the community, but you never know what somebody's had to go through and has went through in their life. And just always being kind and caring and considerate of people's lives and stories. And that's why it's so important for us to share those stories, because we all have one. And I know you've probably helped a lot of people who is out there that, maybe has experience something similar, and just knowing that there's, gifts in the things that's happened.
There is gifts. Look for them, and they are there.
Yes. Well, thank you again for being
Thank
on the
you.
show.
Thank
and
you.
I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Be sure to watch next week with more on One Woman.